Hello everybody and welcome back to the HLTCO YouTube channel. It is Monday and today's video actually concerns Sunderland. Now that might not be a club that you necessarily expect to hear about on the podcast or on the YouTube channel from day to day, but I do genuinely think that the project that is currently underway at the Stadium of Light is one which deserves a spotlight being shone on it because, you know, they have been a club, Sunderland, over the last 2 or 3 years who have been almost stereotyped and typecast by the Sunderland Till I Die Netflix documentary. I think it has had quite a sizable impact on the percentage of football fans that just observe football clubs from the outside peering in and make snap judgments. You know, there was something of a circus feel to Sunderland over the last few years with Charlie Methven and that clip, the infamous clip of him talking about changing the walkout music. It very much felt like the blind leading the blind in the boardroom up in the northeast over the last few years. But of course they are now back in the Championship, and I think the last 12 months specifically have seen Sunderland really kick on in a fashion which to a degree is under the radar. I think they have made waves in terms of their recent results and, you know, the fact they got into the playoffs at the back end of last season, but the exact method in which they are doing it is one which is genuinely quite exciting. And I think from a Sunderland fan's perspective, and again, you know, I'm recording this video today, I don't expect any of the information in it to be of new use to Sunderland fans, but from a neutral perspective it's probably going to be a video that does infuse you about the project that is going on at the Stadium of Light. Just to give a little bit of context, Tony Mowbray, the current manager of the Black Cats, actually came in to that football club in August of 2022. He replaced Alex Neil, who of course left Sunderland to join Stoke City, and at that particular point I don't think anyone necessarily expected Tony Mowbray to pull up any trees. I think, you know, there was going to be a season of consolidation, but instead they actually went on a fantastic run towards the end of last season, going on an unbeaten stretch of 9 games, sneaking into the playoffs on the final day via a 3-0 victory away at Preston North End, and of course they ended up falling out of the playoffs in the semi-finals after a 2-legged defeat to Luton Town, who of course went on to win promotion at Wembley in the very next game. But the project at the Stadium of Light has really continued to kick on over the summer, and the reason for me discussing it on the podcast today is because if you look at the age profile of the Black Cats throughout this season and based on the business they've done across the summer just gone, they really are to an extent playing Football Manager in real life. It is quite remarkable, and their most recent result and performance came at the weekend at home to Southampton. That in itself was quite ridiculous because the average age of their side in that game was just 22.3 years of age. I will read out the players in their starting 11 as well as their ages for you now. In goal, Patterson 23, Hume 21, O'Nien 28, Ballard 23, Kirkin 21, Neil 21, Ekwa 21, Barr 20, Bradley Dack pretty much an old man at 29, Jack Clark 22, and Joe Bellingham, of course Jude Bellingham's younger brother, at just 17. They also had a 16-year-old Chris Rigg come off the bench and actually grab a goal, Sunderland's 5th of the day, to put the cherry on the cake really of that particular victory. But this is something that Sunderland are really going full steam ahead with, not just in terms of the squad that Tony Mowbray selects from week to week, but in terms of their summer business. And, you know, to fully understand it, I think it's key to point out that the ownership structure at Sunderland has actually changed over the last couple of years. Once again, it may well have flown under the radar if you're a neutral that's not plugged into everything that's going on at Sunderland. But the owner now is a man who goes by the name of Kyle Louis Dreyfus. He acquired a 41% stake in the football club back in 2021 from Stuart Donald. He increased that to 51% in 2022, and it actually made him the youngest majority owner of a football club in the entirety of England's top 4 tiers at just 23 years of age, I believe, when that actual deal went through, which is quite remarkable. And, you know, obviously one man doesn't make all the difference. It has to be an overall project that works on every single level. But in Tony Mowbray, I think they have the ideal manager to really lead this youth-led charge, because he seems to be a coach that really does enjoy moulding young players and giving them tools to really improve their game. Of course, if Sunderland were a Premier League football club, they wouldn't have the freedom to experiment in the way that they are with so many young players as part of that first team setup from week to week. But at the moment, it very much is working for them. And of course, Southampton, with Russell Martin in charge, are going to be a heavily possession-based team that has worked for them relatively well in the early running of this championship campaign. But they were utterly blown away by that youthful Sunderland side at the weekend, and it really has made waves in terms of the perception of that football club, and it's exactly why I chose to talk about them on the video today. To talk about specifically as well, their summer business, it is quite remarkable because they have brought in Mason Burstow, 20 years old from Chelsea, Nathan Bishop, 23 years old from Manchester United. Forgive me if I mispronounce any of these names, by the way, because they are completely new to me. Adil Ashushi, 21 from Lorient, Timothy Pembele, 20 from PSG, Luis Semedo, 19 from Benfica. Again, Bradley Dack, the old man of the group at 29, but a tried and trusted lieutenant of Tony Mowbray from his time at Blackburn. You've got Nectarios Triantis, 20 years old, coming in from Australia at Central Coast. Elisa Mayanda, 18 years old from Sochaux. Joe Bellingham, again, I mentioned him in the starting 11, 17 years old from Birmingham. Jensen Silt, 20 from PSV, and Nazari Rusin, 24 years old from Zorya Lugansk. And that in itself is a quite ridiculous list of players, I'm sure you'll agree. You look at the age profile, you look at the amount of money spent as well. This is quite ridiculous because the overall balance of their summer business to date actually comes out at a profit of 1.9 million euros, and that is because Ross Stewart has recently been sold to Southampton, thus completely wiping out all of the expenditure that Sunderland have had across this summer window. But it really does show that they are going full steam ahead with this youth development model. And of course, the Academy of Light is something that they have really hung their hat on in recent years, but I think they are doing their best to bolster that first team group with as many young players as possible. And of course there will be bumps along the right way because you're dealing with young players. The infamous Arsene Wenger quote that has been shared multiple times on social media, which speaks about players with potential at young ages have to be given room for error and the opportunity to make mistakes because they improve as players for it. And of course that's easier said than done if you're a manager that doesn't have the backing of the board and the backing of the fan base. But I think Sunderland have been through the mill so extremely over the last few years with that spell in League One, with the documentary that made them the punchlines, so many people's gags, and now they find themselves in a genuinely positive place with a young squad that, and let's be real about this, if you look at resale value here, which is becoming more and more of a buzzword in the modern game, you sign players, unless you are an elite club that are expecting to fight for European or Champions League football year after year, you sign players with potential who could go on and put themselves in a shop window and be sold for huge amounts of money further down the line. We have seen Brentford utilise this system very well. We have seen Brighton sell players for vast sums of money this summer in Alexis McAllister and Moises Caicedo, and Sunderland really are hanging their hat on this particular model. Whether or not it works for them in the long term remains to be seen, but they are going at it from an extreme perspective. If you're putting an 11 out that's got an average age of 22.3, winning 5-0 in front of a home crowd that I believe was over 40,000 at the Stadium of Light at the weekend, it's just a runaway train of momentum. And to speak specifically about Chris Rigg, the 16-year-old that came off the bench and managed to grab that goal against Southampton at the weekend, Tony Mowbray last season said, "I think Chris Rigg belies his age a little bit. I can be quite harsh on him sometimes. I have to check myself and think, hang on a minute, he's a 16-year-old boy. He played with discipline." This was after a game against Crewe. I asked him to play deeper in the first half. He played deeper, and then when I said at half time, because we had so much dominance that he could leave that sixth position and start breaking into the box, he broke into the box and he went and scored. It shows me that he takes on information, that he wants to please and do well. He's a good footballer. He's got a wonderful future in front of him. I'm sure of that. And there are other players, a part of the Sunderland Academy, that really can continue to push for a first team place across this season as well. You've got Tom Watson, who has managed to score he's got 5 goals and 6 assists in 13 outings for the under-18 league in the Premier League academy setup last season. You've got Jake Waters, who's had an incredible season, finding the back of the net on 13 occasions last term. There are just players coming from every single angle at the moment for Sunderland, and really giving their fan base an anchor to build around, which feels rock solid. And, you can look at all different clubs across the EFL. The golden goose is to get into the Premier League, we all know that, and there are a million ways to attempt to do it. But I think from a financial sustainability perspective, as well as getting everyone on board with what you are trying to do, going with an incredibly young squad that has all this potential, sprinkling in a selection of players from the academy, having a manager in Tony Mowbray that will continue to show faith in it and won't, deviate from that path, and having a new owner that is completely blowing away the cobwebs of the previous hierarchy with Stuart Donald and Charlie Methven, who made them such a laughingstock across the game. It's just a quite incredible turnaround in a couple of years. And, I dare say there will be Sunderland fans watching this thinking, keep it down, we don't want everyone to know what we're doing. But if you're putting in performances like they did against Southampton at the weekend, scoring 5 goals, having that raucous home crowd, and doing it with such a low age profile, you are going to generate headlines. The famous Alan Hansen line of "you can't win anything with kids," it's been proven to be wrong time and time again. I'm not suggesting that Sunderland are going to go on some sort of mad run and make their way into the automatic promotion race, but they are certainly a very exciting club to keep an eye on across this season. I will be looking out for them, and I would hope after watching this video there will be a fair few more neutrals that will join the Sunderland fans in keeping a close eye on how the Black Cats get on across this campaign to come. Hopefully you've enjoyed that video, hopefully it's been informative. As I say, I dare say most Sunderland fans won't have had any new information given to them by this video, but I think it's important to me specifically that when I create this YouTube content, I try and shine a light on things that wouldn't otherwise be given a spotlight in the Big Six dominated media landscape, and I think Sunderland are a perfect club to cover today. If you've enjoyed the video, please do consider giving it a like and pushing the subscribe button, because it does genuinely make a massive difference to me. Other than that, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Cheers.